everyone, this is Pico Entertainment and we are back again, and here now we have another video for you, and this will be a review of the third trailer for The Batman. Now, as you all know, The Batman is the reboot of the iconic DC Comics character. This time it will be directed by Matt Reeves, starring Robert Pattison in the lead role alongside Zoe Kravitz, Andy Serkis, Colin Farrell, Wright and Paul Dano, and it's due for release theatrically on March the 4th, 2022. Now, we've previously had two trailers for The Batman, both from the DC Fandome events, both of this year and last year, and overall I felt it looks very sophisticated with a far more somber and restrained tone, which I was overall concerned about because I feel that they're trying to make this movie too realistic, taking away any of that comic book flavour that we would associate with the character of Batman. And overall, I'm still not convinced by Pattison in the lead role. I still maintain that he should have been cast as an older version of a Nightwing or a Terry McGinnis in a Batman Beyond project, though I did also like Zoe Kravitz in the role as Catwoman. So in this new trailer then, they've definitely ramped up the pace and the action. We get far more dialogue scenes between Batman and Catwoman. We get far more spectacular shots of Batman leaping and crashing through windows and jumping. So in terms of an overall trailer itself, I thought it looked quite good overall. So we'll just go over the more standout elements of this particular trailer itself and whether these moments actually got me any more convinced. So in the first couple of scenes, we got some more shots of Robert Pattison as Bruce Wayne. You see him talking to a woman here. I don't know if this is a fellow investor of the company of Wayne Enterprises, but we get some further discussions here as to the fact that both of his family were far more philanthropists, and since Bruce has taken over the company, he's been far more secluded and he's not particularly doing anything. Now, this is standard 101 storytelling when it comes to Batman. We always know that in most iterations, the Waynes were always people who were generally far more involved in terms of the overseeing of Gotham. Of course, when we go back to Batman Begins, they were far more invested in helping out people in terms of hospitals and clinics. So, of course, when Bruce takes over, he's far more secluded away because of his role as Batman. So this is nothing new here in terms of characterization. Now, whether he will take on the more playboy billionaire persona, I'm not so sure. That's certainly not what we're getting in terms of the hints throughout this particular story. We then mix in these scenes of Pattison as Bruce Wayne with that more of the frantic car chase between Batman and Penguin that we saw from the second trailer. Certainly looks like what's going to be one of the most standout set pieces of the film. We get this scene here where we see the car flipping over. Great shot here. We get some more shots here of the Batmobile. I'm still not liking the design. Of course, it's light years behind the classic, and I believe the benchmark interpretation, which is of course the Tim Burton version. But here it just looks like a regular car, and I've never felt that. I've always felt that the Batmobile should have something more of a distinctiveness in terms of its overall aesthetic and design, something that screams Batman whenever it appears on screen. Now, of course, the ultimate excuse will be that this is Batman in his first year or his second year as the city's protector, so he's still finding his way around in terms of building all the gadgets and toys. That's not an excuse for me. I would still want to see a far more Batmobile in a classic form. We then get more scenes here where we see more the Riddler leaving his clues and messages. So this is very much playing more into the almost serial killer type of dynamic that they're going with the character. And this is very much in keeping with the Riddler. As we all know, he's someone who likes to play games. He likes people to try and figure out his clues and messages. And throughout this trailer, we do get more scenes of Batman and Catwoman, as mentioned before. And this trailer is very much hinting that this will be very much more of a team-up dynamic as they hunt down the Riddler. We get that line from Catwoman when she mentions the fact that he's tracking down the Waynes, or he's in line with the Waynes. So we do ask, why exactly is Catwoman chasing down the Riddler? We'll have to wait and see. Is she more of a thief or more of a crime fighter? We get an earlier shot here where the two are fighting together. So this, I believe, will be in the earlier stages of the film where we see Catwoman perhaps looking to steal some jewellery from a mansion, and then Batman intercepts her. They have an initial fight, she gets away, and then they come across later on throughout the movie. We have this next shot here where we see them very much riding together on their motorcycles, again concentrating on that fact that this will be far more of a team-up movie with both of them involved in chasing down the Riddler. And as I mentioned before, I think Zoe Kravitz looks very good in the role. And we see another shot here where, again, we're getting far more of that closeness between the two, that overall sexual, romantic tension, that what we always associate between Batman and Catwoman. Now, I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that we will go anywhere near the levels that they did for Batman Returns with Michael Keaton and Michelle Pfeiffer, but at the same time, hopefully they can generate enough spark and chemistry between the two lead characters, as I believe that'll be very important in carrying the story throughout this film. We then get this next shot here of what I believe is the Riddler. We see him more in this dark green, almost like khaki like outfit on here with the helmet covering his face overall. Again, I'm not a fan of this interpretation. I very much doubt that we will see the classic Riddler in terms of his overall suit and question marks, because as I mentioned in previous reviews, they're very much going for a far more realistic, grounded take. I'm just not a massive fan of the character, because that could be anybody. If you were to look at that, first of all, you wouldn't think it's the Riddler. So again, not my personal preference in terms of the direction that they're taking, but we'll wait and see how the character transcends in terms of an overall performance. We then look at the next scenes here where we see the Riddler's messages, where it all began. So I think the movie is again going to draw far more on the personal connection between Batman and the Riddler. He seemingly knows his identity as Bruce Wayne. We get the shot here where he literally states his name, Bruce Wayne. So I still believe that this will be less the Riddler and more of a hybrid of the Riddler stroke Hush stroke Thomas Elliot, who has a far more of a personal connection with Bruce Wayne if you follow the source material. We then go on to this next shot here where we see a first really full frontal shot of Zoe Kravitz as Catwoman. Again, I understand this is more the prototype version, if you like, as to what we are normally used to in terms of a Catwoman interpretation, and maybe towards the end of the film we'll probably see a more fuller version of what they associate with the source material in terms of her having the more of the goggles look that we know from recent Catwoman interpretations. But again, I'm just not a fan of this overall look in terms of the character. It just seems a bit bland and very uninspired, but I do assume we will get far more of a distinctive look as we go later on within the story. But we certainly get a few shots here extra where we see Zoe Kravitz very much active and taking charge, and that's good. I'm actually more convinced that she will actually be the star-out performer throughout this overall film. We get a further shot here where we see somebody who has obviously been captured by the Riddler. We see him all taped up by the mouth. We've got that no more lies, and also we've got to the Batman on his chest, and he's obviously got some explosives tied to him, and he's holding a phone. So we're going to get a lot of scenes here where again we're going to see the Riddler setting up all of these traps and messages, and then each time there's going to be a phone for Batman to answer. So it's very much going to be much more of a cat and mouse dynamic than what we see, and a lot of fans may be pleased by that because we're very much venturing far more into the detective side of the narrative. I did like all of those shots where we see the city very much in chaos with all of the explosions here within the harbour. Very good. I will also admit that we've kind of seen similar shots both in Batman Begins and also, if you remember, from Dark Knight Rises where Bane took over the city. So again, this is very familiar territory that what we've seen before, but overall it still looks very impressive from a visual standpoint. So I assume this is probably near the end of the movie where we see the Riddler's plan coming to fruition. Again, this is standard storytelling 101 as we escalate the story and the stakes and the danger and the jeopardy. Very similar as to also what we see from this scene here where we see the city becoming submerged underwater. So again, I believe this will be near the climatic part of the film. What will ultimately be the Riddler's plan? We get this next shot here of Bruce looking up as we see the bat signal in the air. So again, classic comic book stuff here. Of course, we are dealing with a Batman who's established in his first year, so no surprises to see that iconic sequence here within this trailer. We get another shot here where we see Bruce Wayne hooded, walking in what it seems like a nightclub. We see him with the eyeliner. So again, with the various other shots that we saw in the previous two trailers, this is going to be a Bruce Wayne that's trying to mix it with very much the streets of Gotham in terms of the underground nightclubs and the streets and the alleyways. He's going to try and be much more of an undercover role. You'd like to think that he'd try and conceal himself a bit more when walking around, because obviously where he's Bruce Wayne, people may recognise him. But I suppose it offers a slightly different dynamic where we see Bruce Wayne actually on the streets without his Batman costume trying to investigate what's going on. I like all of the fight sequences that we see between Batman and Catwoman. This shot here, it looks like he's fighting a Riddler or somebody within a Riddler costume here where we see the green uniform with the plastered face. We see here again Catwoman fighting him. So is this a climatic act throughout the film where we see both Batman and Catwoman taking on the Riddler? We will wait and see overall. And I like this shot here again where we see Batman fighting off some more thugs in the smoke on here. Very cinematic, very good. Again, typical shots when you're making a Batman story, to have him fighting in this mist type of background, adding to the mystique and the aura of the character. So very well presented on this shot here as well. And then we get the final shot here where we see Pattison looking on here. I'm still not sure about him in his overall look. He does look terrible, but he's still not the classical Batman as what I thought. Again, it's just some of the costume aesthetics that we see here around his neck. But I guess at this point, I'm kind of more used to it by now. So I guess I'll give it more of a pass in terms of his overall visualization of the character. I also want to mention this scene here that we see between Alfred and Bruce, where Bruce outlines that Alfred lied to him. And Alfred says that we've all have scars, so do you as a Wayne. Now, I think this is in more reference to the Riddler, and again, as I mentioned before, I believe that this will be more the Thomas Elliot of the character, with most interpretations drawing it out as more Thomas Elliot was a best friend of Bruce, and something happened between the two when they were younger, and then Thomas Elliot has somehow deduced that Bruce Wayne is Batman, and he's got some other grievance against the city of Gotham, and that's when he adopts the Riddler identity and then goes around causing all this chaos and trying to draw Bruce to his attention. So again, some good shots here where we see Catwoman leaping off the building here when she mentions she's got 9 of them. Again, I don't think we're going to get anything similar as to what we saw with the Selina Kyle version from Batman Returns. I think that was just a throwaway line, obviously referring to cats. But again, very good visuals and aesthetic and cinematography in terms of this overall movie. And admittedly, I love this shot here again. Typical Batman where he's jumping through and crashing through buildings. That's quality, standard comic book pose right there. So admittedly, that does look very good on the screen as well. So again, as I mentioned at the start of this video, from watching this trailer, I'm still overall in the same position as I was after the first 2 trailers. This film, it looks composed, well made. There's going to be a serious, sinister tone that's very interesting to see. It does very much hint at we will be getting much more of a detective serial killer. 3, 2, 1. Serial killer narrative, which again will be a fresh direction for the Batman characters, what we've previously seen in live action. I'm still not convinced in Robert Pattison completely as Batman, but I think overall it's passable as long as his performances are strong as well as the story is compelling enough. Then I do feel that I'll be able to look past all of the dislikes that I have in terms of the design and give this character a pass so far. And as I mentioned before, I do believe Zoe Kravitz will be the star-out performer throughout this film. And I do hope that we do get some sort of comic book imagination from this film. I understand they want to keep it more constrained, more grounded. I get that. But I still want to have far more of that comic flavour, dynamic and energy that we should be getting from all Batman films overall. So those are my overall thoughts and feelings and review of what I deem to be the 3rd Batman trailer. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Are you more excited? Are you more hyped for this trailer overall? Or do you think it's covering same familiar beats that we've already seen from the Nolan trilogy, in particularly Batman Begins? Or do you think this is offering a fresh, different, dynamic take for the Batman? And do you think if this proves to be very successful, that we will get continued sequels overall, and perhaps DC may use this as a foundation to build a new cinematic universe, if that's even possible considering all of their plans, if you could call those plans regarding the multiverse? Or do you think this will be a standard one and done? Do you feel it will fail to connect as well with audiences as what people are hoping for? Let me know what you think in the comments as well. Please also hit and like those subscription and notification buttons so I can provide you with more high quality content like this in the future. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, stay at safe distances, and I will see you very, very soon.